Happy Fantasy Friday. It is time for book club. We are Lindsey,
Kelly,
and Katharine, and this is the Banter and Bookmarks podcast. We are three book besties diving into romantasy with unhinged theories and a bit of spice.
heads up, this podcast contains spoilers. If you would like a spoiler-free introduction to the book, go back and listen to episode 1, our world-building episode for this series. But for now, we will be covering all things Quicksilver, and it will absolutely be full of spoilers.
So pour yourself a drink, come escape reality with us, and let's talk about books. This week, we are going to be deep diving chapters 30 through 33. So let's get into it. Katharine, you want to get us started with chapter 30?
Chapter 30, Swear It. The camp is in excited chaos, having seen the column of angel's breath illuminate the sky from Lorith's sword. Kingfisher tells Saris that she smells terrible after spending 15 hours in the forge, and he gives her a gentle bath before she falls asleep. She wakes up in Fisher's arm and has a rather confusing conversation in her mind with the Quicksilver. Renfis bursts into the tent, telling them that the hordes are at the bank. After Saris promises Kingfisher to stay by his side, he presents her with his father's sword, and the three of them go off into battle together.
Chapter 31, The Darn. Kingfisher, Renfis, and Saris join their army at the banks of the Darn. There's a horde of vampires trying to cross the river, and Saris notes that Malcolm is not with them. Ren tells Saris that the vamps cannot cross running water, but a nasty few vamps try. Kingfisher explains to Saris that they are bound by the rules of war and that they cannot attack until they reach the border, which runs halfway down the Darn. As soon as an old, nasty man vamp crosses halfway, Kingfisher and Renfis unleash their magic, drowning most of the vampires. However, a few make it across, and Renfis says, "Let's greet these fuckers with steel." Saris hears the Quicksilver in the sword speak to her, telling her that it's ready to fight too. She and Renfis fight side by side in perfect harmony. As Kingfisher joins them in their fight, a brilliant white light whips through the sky. It's Lorith's new godsword, and the light is Angel's breath that is granted to him. Before they can celebrate, though, a piercing female scream pierces the night. On the other side of the bank, flanked by 100 vampires, stands Everlane.
Chapter 32, Teladius. Everlane stands on the other side of the river in absolute terror. Smartly, Renfis reminds Kingfisher that he has no magic on the other side of the river and asks the question, why haven't they killed her? Kingfisher notices that she wears a thin band of gold around her neck, keeping her in place. A tall, handsome, and powerful vampire steps into the crowd, Teladius. He tells Kingfisher that Malcolm has decided to keep Everlane for himself, and Kingfisher realizes that she has been bitten by Malcolm and is now enthralled to him. Teladius tells them that Everlane was bitten 12 hours ago, and that Malcolm is waiting for them, and that if he doesn't turn himself over, Malcolm will keep and torture Everlane forever. But wait, Malcolm doesn't just want Kingfisher. He wants the alchemist too.
Chapter 33, Blood in Thanks. Back in the war tent, they go over all their options. Lorith suggests going back to the library in college to look up ancient texts about how to break the thrall before the conversion begins. While Kingfisher sits and stares into space, Saris asks more about Malcolm. Renfis explains the history of the blood curse and goes into depth about Malcolm's power. He tells Saris that Everlane only has two choices. Either she drinks from Malcolm and becomes one of his lords, or she refuses and dies. With the epitome of bad timing, Danya comes crashing into the war tent, demanding her sword back, and punches Lorith in the face. She tries to grab it away from him, and it literally explodes her hand off. They decide to head back to college to regroup and allow some of them to be healed by Talena. Before they go, Renfis interjects, recognizing Saris for her bravery in battle.
So let's deep dive this set of chapters. So we start off in chapter 30 with Swear It. Let's talk about Angel's Breath. So it's kind of briefly mentioned in the book, but I feel like it's going to be way more important come book 2, right? And onwards.
To me, it feels like the exact opposite of one, shadow daddy power, right? Light and dark. But for some reason, it also is giving me the antithesis of brimstone. And we've talked about the word brimstone a lot. And so I don't know why I feel like it's going to come into play in the fact that it is angels and light and like the opposite of what I feel like hell and brimstone and all that is. So that to me is foreshadowing.
Yeah, I love the fact that and I don't quite understand the fact that there's two types of the swords when it comes to the gods, a god sword and angel's breath. Like, can only god swords get angel's breath? That's kind of how I assume.
Oh, like can anyone's power just be angel's breath?
Right. Like you can't just have a sword that has angel's breath. Like you have to have a god sword that has angel's breath.
I always assumed that an all active god swords, once they became active, would have angel's breath. And that's why it was the first time. And I don't know why I'm assuming that, but that was just the way I thought. And so I thought the fact that it's now an active sword, right? We see wisps of smoke coming from Nimrel, which could be something about Kingfisher's power, or maybe it wisping to try to get angel's breath, but it has so little left in it. But I always assume once it's an active god sword, it would have angel's breath. And his is just the first one to be active, because doesn't later in the book, Saris has a similar experience with her sword once it becomes active as well. True. So I just think it's basically them blinking to life.
Right. Like and it's funny because with the Saris one, I find it odd that they don't point out that it's angel's breath.
Yes.
Like they don't use the term with that one.
Been there, done that.
Right.
Yeah.
We've already talked about this.
So is angel's breath something that the sword always has, or is it that moment where the wielder first channels its power?
Or it could be,
because that would make sense for Saris, right?
Yeah, that would.
And with this one, it's kind of his first use of the sword.
Or maybe it's they channel some power, and maybe that's what Saris's was doing. But maybe because when Angel's breath truly comes out of Lorith's sword, it does so much damage. So maybe it's a magnitude of the power emitted from the sword that is enough to be like, because doesn't it go to the sky? Does Saris's even go to the sky the first time she uses it?
Yeah, Saris's description when she uses hers is very skimmed over.
I think
but it's clear
this episode.
I don't know if it's this one or I'm pretty sure it's the next one.
Okay,
so
we'll pay attention to that.
Yeah. And the more you all are talking about it, you're making, because I didn't think it was every god sword gets angel's breath, but now that I'm thinking of it, the name angel's breath, it's like the angels, the gods are like breathing life into it. So maybe it is the moment that they become versus a power that they'll always have. I mean, obviously there's going to be something special about the god swords. They're going to have powers that other regular swords don't have, but is it always angel's breath?
Bolt to lightning.
Yeah.
Right. Like it, so I don't know. Now you're making me think.
Yeah. To me,
it's the special ceremony of it.
Yeah. To me, it's like the moment when a god sword like first comes into and like claims its warrior in that first battle moment.
And that's how they knew that it was happening, because it was like, oh, that's angel's breath. It must be the god sword coming.
But later, though, they say angel's breath for a second time to Lorith's sword when he's using it. I think it's later in after the battle that's upcoming.
Oh, yeah, that's true. We do see it twice.
Yeah, she says angel's breath again, because we see the magnitude of what angel's breath can do from a battle standpoint. And they mention angel's breath again.
Power that god swords have. The main one.
Yeah.
All right. I like it.
And it's also, we're assuming, right, though, that Lora's sword is a god sword.
Mm-hmm.
I think they call it out as that.
Do they?
Yeah.
After so.
Because we know that the Quicksilver chose him, but I don't know that.
Yes, because when she was
because Danya's, we already knew.
Yes, it was.
But since it's reforged, is it still considered a god sword?
Yeah, because when the Quicksilver was talking to her and she was negotiating with it, she said, "Will you put your magic? Will you reforge to a god?"
That's true.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And
sorry, I had like a moment of like,
and they were like, we have to they have to give us a joke, they have to give us a song, whatever it is, and we have to judge the person to see if they're worthy of it. And I think I
do find it really fun. It just shows you, it's kind of going just back to when she was forging that first sword, that she's like, I have 15,000 relics I need to take care of, but you know what I'm going to do first? I'm going to make a sword
for my friend.
I'm going to make a sword first.
Sword.
That's way more important.
Yeah.
And the other question then becomes, not every sword with Quicksilver in it is going to be a god sword.
Right?
Think
so.
I think actually, I think,
right. That, oh, you think that it is going to be a God sword?
No,
if it has
because think she
Quicksilver?
could forge Quicksilver
into anything.
into anything,
I think it's if
right?
the-
Or is it the Quicksilver agreeing to be forged automatically make
Correct.
it a God sword, which would once again
Prove
make it
that
Yes.
theory.
the Quicksilver
Yes.
is the voice of the God.
It's like their telephone almost.
Yes, which
Their
can we
way
talk
of
about the
human-
bonus chapters now or no?
Yeah, you know.
Yeah.
It's out.
So
it's out of the
it's
bag,
out
y'all.
there, but spoiler
FYI,
about-
Kelly has finally read the bonus chapters.
Just read the bonus chapters.
So now we have all 3 read them.
So in the bonus chapters, when Kingfisher gets his god swords from Bal and Mithin, they say a bunch of things that sound exactly like the Quicksilver talking. And then when he has the god sword, the sword talks to him in that same voice that it's like repeats something they said. So I'm like, you're right. I think it has to be
Yeah.
the gods.
Because Bal and Mithin tend to speak in plurals.
Yes.
They say like, we did this, or like, do you want this from us? Like they don't treat each other like individual entities, which is very similar to how the Quicksilver talks.
Yep. So I think the way that Callie wrote those bonus chapters and the way that they made the gods talk, and then the Quicksilver immediately talk the same way after, was her way of saying, Kelly, Lindsey, and Katharine specifically, y'all are right. That is the gods talking to the Quicksilver.
That was a lot of foreshadowing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Foreshadowing us before we read it.
Yeah. Before we even had a podcast, Callie knew.
Callie knew.
She's an oracle.
She oracled it.
She oracled it.
Good job,
Best
Callie.
damn word ever.
Good job, Cal. And then Kingfisher gives Saris a bath. And it's just such a sweet moment.
It is very sweet.
right? There's not really anything to it. It's just really sweet.
Intimacy.
Yeah, it's just really sweet.
I think we're finally seeing just she hasn't even accepted her mating bond or anything, but they've kind of just solidified with each other. Not necessarily what it means for the future, but they're just basically, they just seem way more connected
Yes.
and on the same page.
They've acknowledged
from
their feelings.
Here on
Yes.
out, they're just, the way they even communicate and interact with each other seems a lot more cohesive.
Yes.
And they're like more of a unit together.
Mm-hmm. I agree. So we get a really beautiful quote, an adorable quote from Kingfisher. He says, I was wrong, you are a good thief. What have I stolen? But he smiled a small, sad smile, slowly shaking his head. Sleep a little. The water will stay warm. I'll be back as soon as I've spoken to Wren.
So, everybody, what I wrote in my book.
Wait, we don't know this.
It says, you stole my motherfucking heart.
It's so true.
That was my reaction
What have I
to
stolen?
that line.
Come on, Sarah.
You stole my motherfucking heart.
You big idiot.
And I drew a heart.
Ugh.
And I happened to have a red highlighter while I was doing that.
Perfect. Ugh. Such a cute moment.
It's true.
'Cause
She's a good thief. She stole his heart.
Yep.
So sweet.
And he's grumpy and hard to break. And I feel like she really got into him good.
Yeah. Although I was a little annoyed that he's like, you should take a nap in the bath.
No, because it's warm.
But that's not
not
safe.
He magically made it so the water stays warm. I
Oh,
think he's
okay.
going to magically make it so her head stays above water.
Fair enough.
All
He's
right.
got magic.
Yeah, true,
I'll give
true.
you that. But I was like,
Magic.
the bath? Like, get out of the bath.
Is this the plot twist?
Yeah, like this seems
Murder?
like it could end really
And
badly.
then she died. The end.
And then she died at the end.
But we still had carrion.
So strange conversation.
There's a lot
With-
to unpack.
Yeah.
here.
So it's like almost on our outline, like an entire page of bullet points. So forgive us. We're going to be reading a lot of quotes here because I literally feel like we could just open up and read like 3 pages of
Yeah,
the book,
it's
like
important.
verbatim. So Saris is trying to talk to the Quicksilver about leaving Fisher's body in this
Begging
moment.
it,
Yes.
dealing with it. It's so good.
So when it answers, it gives her kind of a strange answer. It says, quote, we know who she is. She is the dawn. She is the moon. She is the sky. She is the oxygen in our lungs.
So that's what Quicksilver is saying about Saris.
Saris. It's never referred to her like that. It's always talked about he and him and Kingfisher. So I do think that there's some importance here. So in our very first episode, Kelly had postulated that she thought that the Quicksilver was actually Kingfisher's voice as he was struggling in the maze, right? And this was kind of an iteration of his struggle speaking to her. So to me, this quote actually kind of sounds like that. We know who she is, not you are. She is the dawn, she is the moon, she is the sky, she is the oxygen in our lungs. Kind of interesting,
That's a
right?
good point, because it could be the Quicksilver saying to her, we know you because these are the things that you are to Kingfisher, that
Yeah.
Kingfisher has thought of in his own mind that we are very much in. And it's kind of referring back to when Carrion says, good morning, sunshine, or hello, sunshine. And Kingfisher says, don't fucking call her sunshine. She is the moon. She is the mist. She is like all these things. And this quote gives me that vibe. So I think
Absolutely.
you're right with like, these are all the things that she is to Kingfisher. And because the Quicksilver is so much a part of Kingfisher, they're like, it's almost reiterating, these are the things that you are to Kingfisher.
And it's
Yeah.
interesting you say that, because then the Quicksilver goes on to say that it refuses to leave his body. It says that it saved him as a child and it now owns him. So I find this language interesting, because he says, the Quicksilver says, we cannot leave him, we are him. The Quicksilver voices also call Kingfisher a weapon and say, we are him, he is us, we cannot leave, we will die. And Sarah says, you'll die or Kingfisher? To which the Quicksilver replies, all of us, we are one thing, one weapon. Which really reinforces the fact that, yes, like you said, they are one.
I think the Quicksilver is kind of what's keeping him alive.
Oh, for sure. And killing him at the same time.
In the bonus chapters, we know that he almost died. He came back with a god sword. He already had gone through the portal once. He goes through the portal again. And I feel like at this point, the Quicksilver is the thing that is keeping him alive. It's wild to me. And I realized just now that I asked about that quote and it was the next quote in the outline. So
there you go. I thought you were reading it.
No,
I thought you looked at it. Yeah.
Good.
No.
Good.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, we really go back and forth. Like, I think that you could make a solid argument that the Quicksilver is the gods. And I think you could make a solid argument that the Quicksilver is Kingfisher, and potentially make the solid argument that they're one and the same, right? Like, is it about his bargain with the gods and being Xeris champion? So keep going, right? In these quotes. So the Kingfisher also mentions, so Ceres is asking to guide it out of Kingfisher. And it says, we were forged hundreds of years ago. We cannot be unmade. Okay. That again doesn't sound like Kingfisher Quicksilver. That sounds like God Quicksilver. And then it says, we gave him his life, a boy, just a boy. He was young when he entered our pool. Gods. He should not have survived it, but he was strong, and the grand halls of the universe rang aloud with his purpose. We permitted him to live so that he might fulfill that purpose. We bound ourselves to him that he might survive. This die was cast centuries ago. We accepted our fate, alchemist. All of us did. So this pretty much confirms that Kingfisher was forced into the Quicksilver pool by Bellicon when he was young.
That they probably knew he was going to die, because they say he should not have survived.
Right. And Katharine talked a lot in our last episode about the timeline with that, and with Everlane saying that it happened when he was 10. And so the Quicksilver in this moment is saying that it did happen when he was very young.
Yeah.
Right.
And we were questioning that last episode, because they were like, so he literally went into the Quicksilver as a boy. The Quicksilver here is now telling us, yes, he did go into the Quicksilver when he was a boy, before he was 10 years old, when his father went to Zavarin and all the gates were closed. So this is at least matching up with Everlane's timeline, which I think is something very important to note here.
One thing I want to point out that I don't think I was able to explain what I was thinking in that first episode when I said I thought it was Kingfisher, and something that Lindsey just said gave me an aha moment. Because these quotes are saying they're one and the same, right? We are him, he is us. I think when I said the Quicksilver is Kingfisher's voice talking, I think what I mean, like a step beyond that, is it was the Quicksilver inside of Kingfisher talking the thoughts and the feelings and the brain goings on of Kingfisher because it's part of him.
Yeah.
And in this moment, I'm realizing they're saying, yeah, we're all one and the same.
Yes.
So yes, I'm saying it's Kingfisher, but I'm kind of saying it's Kingfisher's Quicksilver, which is its own entity, but the same, if that makes sense.
No, totally.
It does.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think
Kingfisher-
that helped me explain it better.
Kingfisher's the host.
Yes.
And this is in its brain,
Yes.
knowing all of Kingfisher's thoughts, and
Yeah.
that being the communication tool.
Yes.
To
It's not like
communicate his
it's not like
thoughts.
Kingfisher is saying, I'm gonna speak these words out and Sarah's
Yes.
is gonna hear it. It's that connection between, it's that link of the Quicksilver. So this is actually helping me form that thought.
But this also implies that Kingfisher knew what he was doing when he allowed the Quicksilver to remain in him, because Sarah says the Quicksilver wanted her to understand Fisher had agreed to this somehow, right? That he had allowed the Quicksilver to bind to him and he knew what it would mean. And I guess why would he have struck a bargain that would eventually cost him his mind? What he knows, he's keeping it in his body. He's a 10-year-old kid. What do we postulate that was the bargain? I mean, the bargain is basically, we're going to stay in you, we're going to keep you alive. Is the bargain, I know I'm going to have a mate, I want to live for that mate, for that possible future? Or is it something else?
Well, let's think about the word bargain. We also know that he made a bargain with Zareth. So are these bargains one and the same?
My interpretation was yes.
I
Right.
think so too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
So
that-
him keeping the Quicksilver, because, okay, let me flesh this out for a
Mhm.
second.
I already can see where you're
Yeah,
going.
yeah.
And I think I agree with you.
Because in the bonus chapters, we learn that Kingfisher, up until that moment, when we're in the third bonus chapter, Kingfisher, that's his third time visiting the Quicksilver, right? The Quicksilver would have entered his mind when he was young and probably struck a deal in that moment. So Katharine and I have had a kind of lengthy side conversation before. Kelly read the chapters, now she's caught up. But about if that was the third time that Kingfisher went back, and he says then that he wasn't yet Zareth's champion, that he had to have potentially gone back another time in between the timeline of his own life in order to make this deal. So what if, though, those visits are one and the same? If he automatically, like maybe he didn't have to accept officially, I accept that I am Zareth's champion, because the Quicksilver was in him the whole time. Like that automatically makes him Zareth's champion. Like it's the bargain, right?
Or maybe it's, so with those bonus chapters, we are seeing the third time Kingfisher is meeting with the gods. At the same time, he's seeing Saris far ahead speaking with Zareth. And that shows you that time is concurrently happening.
Yeah, they say it's layered
Yeah.
on top of
So
each other,
I have
which
to
love.
wonder if him being infected with the Quicksilver, and then this centuries later, when he strikes the bargain, is just somehow already just intertwined as one and the same, because time
I
has
like that.
no meaning to them.
Like time is a folded piece
Exactly.
of paper,
Yes.
And
right?
maybe that's why I'm struggling
interesting.
with these timeline issues. And wouldn't that be a really cool twist if it's simply because there's a timeline issue, because time is the issue itself. Time
like
is,
especially to the gods.
Exactly.
Gods don't care about
Right.
so maybe all these events we struggle with when it happened, the order of things, it's because it's just for the gods, it's all concurrently happening.
Right.
It's
It's
one
not
and the
actually
same.
in an order.
I kind of like that.
I love that.
It also, to me, answers the question, because one of the big questions I've always had is why Belicon forced Kingfisher through the pool to begin with, right? And again, last time we had a whole timeline conversation about how that timing just didn't quite match up, that when would Belicon have pushed him through the Quicksilver? Because by the time Kingfisher's mother married Belicon, they had never met before. And the Quicksilver pool was already closed. So there's still like kind of an overlap for me there, that something like this could potentially solve that time just doesn't matter, which gets really,
funky.
really funky for sure.
giving Doctor Strange and
Oh,
a lot of Marvel universe vibes,
Yeah.
but it's cool.
But I would like that.
Totally.
It would make it so that we could never figure out the timeline, though.
Right.
Like
Our
all
whole
this
timeline
postulating
homework.
for us about the timeline all goes out the window if we
Mhm.
ever find out that that's the deal.
Yeah.
It would be
so
cool
true.
if we figured it out.
I
Right?
know.
Like we accidentally figured it
Stumbled
out.
upon it.
Because we just can't believe that we can't figure it out. So it must be the fact that time doesn't matter.
Time doesn't matter. Simple as that. Speaking of not mattering, it's kind of no big deal, the Quicksilver, because Talena starts to get it out of Kingfisher by the end of the book.
So I
It
struggle
seems
with
a little
that.
too easy to me.
Like we cannot leave.
Well, Talena and the witch.
But the Quicksilver is a little bit more
Centuries we cannot leave.
strong.
Yeah.
And I would think reliable as I can't leave when I say we can't leave, I can't leave type of thing. All of a sudden, Talena, a Fey healer, and a witch can get the.
Unless maybe the Quicksilver, maybe it's not their power at all. Maybe the Quicksilver has found a higher meaning and it's leaving.
Oh my God.
Let's hear it.
I'm so excited because this face is so
Yeah,
serious.
this is good.
Okay.
Think your thoughts out loud.
Here's the bargain. The bargain was, so we go back to the Arthurian legend, right? Where Kingfisher has a wound and he has to suffer. He's suffering with the Quicksilver in him. What if the bargain is he will have to suffer until his mate chooses her bond? And because when she chose the bond, it was after which Talena and the witch were able to pull the Quicksilver out. Maybe that was the bargain, and he had to wait this whole time for that to happen.
I mean,
And that would mean that
it would wrap up a lot of bows.
Yes. And that would mean that when Renfis says his sole reason for living, that would have a double meaning because he loves her. And if he's living because when she comes to him and they accept the bond, he literally can live on his own without the help of the Quicksilver.
And that would be the bargain. That would be his suffering and then his reward. I mean, oh my God, I'm really liking that one.
I'm sorry to bring it back to Harry Potter here, but all I could think when you said that was when Ron looks at the cup with the Grim in it and he's like, so you're gonna suffer, but you're gonna be really happy about it. And that's Kingfisher, right? Like you're gonna have to suffer, but you're gonna be really happy about it.
The Grim.
And he is a wolf.
The Grim.
Oh my God.
Again,
like
Harry
that.
Potter reference number 1. I feel like we should just keep count.
Yeah, we should have a tally behind
But that would make a lot more sense than why
it does,
all of a
actually.
sudden he's just, it's fine. We can just take Quicksilver out.
Here's the thing, though. We have 5 books. Is it that easy that Kingfisher is going to be healed of the Quicksilver?
I don't know.
That quickly?
Well, it hasn't left him completely. At the end of the book, they've slowed the progression. It was so severe. The relic of his mother was not working. So I don't think they fully removed the Quicksilver, but they have slowed it enough so it's not just literally driving him insane and making him mad. So I do believe the Quicksilver's still in him. We can refresh when we get to those chapters, but I still think it's in him.
Okay.
Do you think that it's eventually going to completely go away?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I think so too. I kind of feel like
Katharine
it's like
with the
happy ending.
the sunshine ending.
Yeah, which she's like,
I love it.
Sunshine. So I don't necessarily think it's going to take all 5 books for him to get rid of the Quicksilver because we still don't know at the end of book 1 his purpose. They talk a lot in this book about Kingfisher's purpose and why he was saved because he had this bigger purpose and they needed him to fulfill this purpose. I don't have any theories yet about
what is that purpose.
There are so many things it could be, but there's nothing for me that's like, oh, maybe this is what it is. I feel like it's something we have not even scratched the surface of yet. So I'm wondering if the Quicksilver is the thing that they solve in book 1 because book 1 is called Quicksilver and then they move on and then there's more hurdles and more things and we're going to learn about his purpose. And so I kind of feel like I could see a world where the Quicksilver is gone some point in the series before the very end of the series because we're focused on other bigger things that we as the reader can't even frickin' fathom yet, and I am so excited.
Which,
about
and
that.
honestly, it makes sense because I think I've mentioned it before. Like, one of the things I struggle with at the end of this book is who our big bad is going to be, because Malcolm is Dunsies, and I believe that he is truly Dunsies. And to me, Madra and Bellicon aren't quite evil enough.
And they're not smart enough.
They're not smart enough. I think
Malcolm was a
we're
smart
only
one.
there as a trio. So that kind of ties into that. Like, this has all been set up, right? If Malcolm is now gone, if we're flushing the Quicksilver out, we've got a whole new set of issues that are going to come into play here.
And to be fair, we don't know Ceres's ultimate purpose either.
Right.
And this series is not called the Quicksilver series. It is called the Fae and Alchemy series.
Yeah.
And book 1 is called Quicksilver. So I think Quicksilver is going to be important in the whole series, but I don't think it is the ultimate for the rest of the series. I think we're going to see a lot of different things because Fae and Alchemy. And when Ceres talks to Zareth, he tells her that he has power over all of these things and he names them all. And the next book is called Brimstone. So, like, I wonder if we're just going to start to see all the little elements of her as an alchemist and how they interplay. But I'm not saying that Quicksilver is not going to be important. I'm just saying it's not, the name of the series is not.
And
Yeah,
Quicksilver
that's
series.
true. Yeah, that's really true. I don't think I had really thought about that specifically before, that this is just the name of the book, not
Just
the name
the
of
one
the
book.
series.
Right.
I also like how Kingfisher sweetly says, though, I was waiting for you to ask the Quicksilver to leave me. Like, that's just kind of sweet, because the Quicksilver has told her we can't leave. Then he confirms that himself, that the Quicksilver can't leave him. So we know it's reliable what the Quicksilver is saying. It's just kind of sweet that he had a positive expectation for her and she fulfilled it for him.
Yeah. So then Renfis comes in. Guys, the horde is here. And we got some neat magic, right? This is some impressive magic. Quote, a length of curling black shadow extended in his hand, becoming Nimmerel. That is neat.
So cool.
Cool. And then the next thing, he helps her get dressed with magic. All of a sudden, she had clothes on. That is neat.
I mean, I like it better when he helps her to get undressed with his shadow magic. But
Ayo!
Hey!
But, like, imagine that would make mornings so much easier.
So good.
Like, on
The
days.
gate binding from the door.
Yeah.
Renfis can just,
Man, Sarah's life is.
Seriously.
Once they get her shit sorted out, her life's going to be pretty easy.
Once they end this stupid fucking war, she can live
Thousands-year-old war.
No big deal.
They can just go in Ballard and live in happiness in Ballard forever and eat Wendy's biscuits.
Get dressed by the shadows. Wendy's biscuits.
Eat Wendy's biscuits. So, of course, Ceres wants to go into battle with him, and Fisher is like, no. And then she's like, no, I'm going. And then he's like, okay, promise that you'll stay by my side or run. And we see this is kind of their first moment where he has not forced her to use his oath. And I think she really appreciates it, right? There's a quote here, a wave of hot emotion knifed me in the center of my chest. This was the kind of male I wanted to be with. I swear it. She's gonna go, but she's not gonna go under his oath, and he's not gonna force her to.
But also, he says, if you promise you'll stay by my side, if I say to do something, you will do it. And she says, yes. And he says, I'm going to take you at your word and I'm going to trust you. So it's on both sides that they're basically saying, we're going to trust each other from now on.
Yeah.
And it's a good stepping stone in their relationship.
For sure.
I'm happy about it.
I also wanted to note just a couple of details on Solus, right? Because it's got a crescent moon on the pommel where the horns of the crescent are almost touching, right? To form a whole circle. And then there's apparently script writing down the hilt and across the blade, but they never say what's the writing on.
Yes.
Solus.
Just that it was written in Old Fae.
Yeah. So we don't know. And it could be nothing, right? Because Lorith's didn't actually have meaning. It was just something important for Sarah. She just liked the words, which she forged on Lorith's blade, right? So it might not have meaning. But I thought it was interesting the author chose to exclude what was written on there, maybe teasing us for the future there.
Mm-hmm. I think we're going to find out what it says. I feel like it's going to be meaningful.
Yeah.
This is also the first time we hear mention that Solus belonged to Kingfisher's dad. Like, it's not mentioned
Interesting.
until this moment.
Really?
It's so important because it's his dad's sword, and he's happy that his mate has it now. This was a quote where I was like, I thought Kingfisher's dad was dead because he mentioned his bones. Bones. Why do I remember bones? Here's the bones
Here it
quote.
is,
We finally got to it. My father's bones rest somewhere in Zilvarin. His sword spent the past millennia there, which makes it more Zilvarin than Ivalian now, I think. So it's kind of nice how he's just like, sword's yours. It's not a Yvalian sword. It's a Zilvarin sword. It was my father's, but now it's yours. And I like that he's not making a big deal of it. Danya freaks out because it's her father's sword, but Kingfisher is like, I'm proud for you to wield my father's sword.
Yeah, exactly. So this was the quote that you kept thinking that confirmed that Kingfisher's father was dead for you.
Exactly.
Right?
Because I was just like, well, if he says bones, then there's got to be bones.
Right.
But then
Yeah,
I was like, he's never seen bones. You're right.
Right. Like, and that's what gets it for me. It's like, okay, you say that he is, but why would you assume? Like, if he went through the Quicksilver and then he was never seen again, why wouldn't you just assume he was in Zilvarin? Especially given the fact that Kyrian is still alive.
Yep.
Why would we not assume that Finran is?
Except nobody knows Carrion is alive.
Well, right.
True, but either way, why would you assume that he was dead? Like Faye live all of this time. Why would you just assume that Madra had killed him?
Unless you saw it firsthand that he was killed.
Which he did.
What's making me laugh is that like something my dad said. You know how like people say like, oh, rest your bones. It made me think of it when I read this. I was like, oh, my father's bones rest somewhere in Zilvarin. Maybe it's like
just resting.
He's just resting.
He's just resting. Just resting his bones.
Rest your bones.
And I don't think that's what he meant.
I have zero.
It's not what he meant.
0% chance that is the connection, but it just made me think that.
But to your point, his father is a master glamorer. Why wouldn't you assume your dad?
Illusionist. We get the word illusion in the bonus chapters, which I was dying to say in the last episode, but I couldn't.
Your dad knows how to hide. Why would you assume he's dead? I mean, that's a good point. Why would you assume it? Why? Why would you think that?
Because it's not just glamour. If we read into the bonus chapters and we know that Kingfisher literally creates a bath for Cerys out of nothing behind a door that is not going to exist after the bath is done.
Yeah, for that time.
And that is his father's illusion magic. We know that it's not just glamoring people to change their appearance. He can literally create things out of nothing. That opens a huge world of power and possibilities of what he could be doing, where he could be hiding and be still alive, I think.
If you're Kingfisher and this human who just so happens to be your mate comes through the Quicksilver pool, why is your first question not, yo, where's my dad?
Or, I have my dad's blood. Let me go smell him out in Zilvarin.
Good point. The pool is open. You have an alchemist. Why wouldn't you try to find him? Especially knowing that he goes into Zilvarin to get Hayden/Carrion.
Maybe he truly does believe his father is dead because he was so young when he died and he saw his mother grieve. Maybe he has just convinced himself.
Or what if maybe one of the Orkling visions was of his dad dead, but we know the visions can be wrong, right? We saw Cerys with her ears. Maybe he thought his dad was dead because at some point one of her visions had that fate. So maybe he's just relying on it because it is just so strange.
Yeah. Let me tell you though, I am so convinced of this theory that I will either look like the biggest genius in the literary world.
That he's alive?
Right? Or the biggest idiot.
Oh, no, he's alive.
No, like, it's one or the other. Like, I'm either going to be the smartest person in the world or the dumbest.
No, he's alive.
Thank you.
He's alive.
I 100% believe he's alive.
Yeah.
So we're all dumb.
But what if we're wrong?
All a bunch of idiots over here.
Honestly, if we're done, we've come up with a great fanfic.
We're not the only people on the internet that believe this too. I've seen this theory.
We have
receipts.
We said it. We have receipts. Like, we can prove. Like, it's not that we're just like throwing this out into the ether, right? Yeah. Like, it is.
It's very, very nicely fitting in with certain plot points that it just, you can just slot that one in there.
Yep. And again, we get to see our good friend Ren just being so supportive. So Cerys notes that Ren's expression is as if to mean to say, good, at last. This as it was always meant to be, Sarah's Fane. It's so sweet.
This was the quote that convinced me, because you guys had it that you were like, Fisher's talking to Ren. Ren knows they're mates.
Yeah.
I wasn't totally sold, but as we were going back through it, and then I saw this one, and I clicked for me, she's holding Solace while he's saying this to her. Why would he? And the fact that she's noting that's what his expression means, because he's not saying these words. Yeah. She's just inferring his meaning. And so I was like, that sells it for me that he knows that they're mates. Yeah. That was good for me to get there.
Solid BFF vibes on both
their
sides, right? So then we moved into chapter 31, the Darn. So we learned that vampires can't pass over running water. Convenient, right? Makes sense why we're battling on a riverbank.
And why they're constantly breaking the ice.
Yep.
Why they can't make the ice stay solid.
Then some heavy military strategy here, right? We're bound, this is a quote, we're bound by the rules of war, Fisher said. We can't use magic to attack or affect an enemy until that enemy has breached our border. And anyway, our magic doesn't work on Sansrothian soil. Fey magic needs light and life to survive, and there's nothing on their side of the river but death, darkness, and decay. Our lands are divided directly down the borderline of the Darn. But the second these fuckers cross over... So I like it here. I like the parallel that Fey magic needs light and life to survive, but Fisher's power is shadows and darkness. Ren's power is light. So you think about the bigger picture that Kingfisher is drawing his shadow magic from light.
He's not, just because it's shadow magic doesn't make him inherently evil or anything.
And you can't have a shadow without light.
Without light. Yeah, I just think it's a cool way to think about that. And seeing Kingfisher and Renfis's like power side by side, they're almost the antithesis of each other.
Yeah.
It's really neat to me.
Yeah. We get a quote here. Ren and Fisher acted in unison, drawing their power to them. The air crackled with energy. My teeth buzzed with it. Both warriors moved with lethal precision. Ren drew his hand back and launched a ball of blue-white light into the steel-gray sky. At the same time, a forceful ink-black wind surged from Fisher's outstretched hands.
That's so cool.
The wind struck the male vampire in the chest, howling around him and burning through the remnants of his clothes, through his sloughing skin, through the bare yellowed bones of his rib cage, and then Ren's brilliant orb came crashing down onto the river. It exploded into a sphere of light and heat that smashed the fragile ice from one bank to the other. The other vampires, who had still been standing on the Sanisroth side of the river, screeched and howled as they plummeted into the fast-moving depths below and disappeared from sight. All up and down the river, the ice was fractured, the way impassable. In other words, all was safe.
Big ball of light.
Except for, was it?
For now. Man. Gross. It was a really cool scene. I was like, damn, they're hot.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, wow, Ren's got a cool power.
Yes.
Big ball of light.
Yeah. Because is this the first time we see Ren's light magic?
Yeah, because we only saw his I walk from here to
I walk from here
to the forge. I walk from here to there. That's his power.
But this is the first time we see his light magic.
I believe so.
Very cool.
But wait, there's more. Then the vents are still coming.
Actually, this next quote kind of gives me chills when I read it. So it's in the blink of an eye. He was becoming something wild. His skin cast off an eerie pale glow, his dark waves blowing on an invisible wind. He had never seemed very human to me, but now, balancing on the precipice of danger, he was unspeakably fey.
Do you ever see those kind of visuals they make of fae when they talk about fae that are usually evil, and they make them look like beautiful, and then they slowly progress them to looking almost evil and animalistic? That visual was going through my head when I read it the first time, and again when you were reading it. I just see this, like, he's becoming almost sharper in his features.
Yeah, I kind of like that.
But guess what?
What?
Apparently the feeders took swimming lessons.
Yeah.
They learned to frickin' swim.
Start coming on over.
Come on.
And in that moment, Solace, the sword, speaks to Saris for the first time. It wants to fight.
Us too, and us.
Says, us too, and us. So we again talked about the god swords a lot. Solace hummed in my hands, sending waves of energy up into my shoulders with every hit I landed. This is god sword power, right? Like, is this her moment with Solace?
I don't think this is the moment, only because we see later on, like, she had a bigger moment with like lights and flashes and everything.
But the
But the
Quicksilver
fact that it
speaks
talked to her the
Yeah.
first time, I think was like her binding,
This is
like
like the start of it.
it waking up.
Yeah.
Almost
yeah,
to
yeah.
say, like, that's what I think I'm trying to say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, I can see that. I can see that.
But one thing I thought was interesting. So let's go back to the fact that the god swords left the Fae, and they were struggling with the fact that the Fae want war, right? A couple of chapters ago, we're talking about how the Quicksilver is mad because the Fae want war. Yeah. But then the Quicksilver in Solace is talking to Ferris of, we want to fight. We want to fight. So which is it? Why is it so contrary? You took away all the power from all these god swords because you want peace, but then you're really hopped up on the idea of let's go fight, let's go fight. It's strange. Yeah.
I have a theory. I think it's because they are seeing that the Fae and the humans that they are now waking up for and binding themselves to are deep down good, and they understand their reasons and their purpose for fighting, and they see, oh, war is not, yes, war is awful and evil and bad as a concept, but their purpose is good, noble. And I think that they're seeing that loyalty and saying, okay, this is a noble cause, and so we want to fight because we want to like almost be on the good side of history. So that's how I read it, because I also was like, wait a minute, they never wanted to fight. But to me, it's like we are acknowledging that you're good people.
Do you think it's because the humans came back into the picture? Because I
think it's Saris.
You think so?
Specifically her.
I think it's specific, and that's what I was literally, when you said that, I had that thought on the tip of my tongue.
Yeah.
Is that I think that Saris coming back into the picture has brought the Quicksilver or the gods or whatever, this higher entity, it's almost like brought a microscope onto the situation that they're now paying attention. Like before, the war had been waging on and they hadn't really been paying attention to what was going on because they've got bigger things to think about. Like Zareth says that, like he cuts off a leaf and it kills billions of people. Like it's that big. So I think Saris now being back is putting a microscope on the situation, and it's realizing, hey, there's bigger things at play here. We can maybe return. We can maybe come back.
Yep. We also have my favorite quote in the entire book here from Ren that I just, when he says this, you always get good quotes from the main characters when they like tell each other that they love each other. But Ren saying this to me was like, oh, and you also tell your BFF. Like when guys tell their friends, it just makes it extra special. Okay, so Ren says, don't you dare die on my watch, Saris Fane. Fisher will never forgive me if his sole reason for living is torn to pieces in her first fucking battlefield. Come on. Fisher
They know.
Absolutely told Ren that Saris is his mate, and Ren is sold. He's in. I love this. I love this.
It's a friendship.
Yeah.
You love friendship like love.
Yes. And he's like, no, I'm going to protect my best friend's woman. And not just because you're my best friend's woman, but because I also care about you. I see his care for her in this quote too. I love Renfis. I love you.
Like I wrote that because I wrote on here, Saris sets him up, Renfis knocks him down. And I know that I wrote it because I remember writing it, but I'm like, that doesn't sound like me.
You wrote that. I wrote the second part.
Yes. Katharine added, apparently a headless feeder is a dead feeder.
I like how we played off each other on that one.
I remember, but I'm like, why? I don't say things like that. Saris
But
sets him up, Renfis
you
knocks
said
him
it.
down. And it is true. That's kind of how the battle goes. He's like, all right, I'm going to get him to you. I'm going to get them all in line. And they work together beautifully. Like if you want to talk about them having a good friendship, this scene physically solidifies it.
The movie is going to be an insane battle montage scene.
So this next quote I had highlighted, and I want you guys to ponder something. So this is Saris wielding Solace. So she says, time slowed down and the strangest thing happened. My heart rate dipped. A sense of peace washed over me, acceptance and understanding. The vampire on the left bypassed Ren and came straight for me. He was moving fast. I knew he was, and yet it seemed as if he was running on loose sand. I could see the mindless animal plan of attack. And after this happens and she dispatches with the vampire, Ren's like, what was that? I wonder if does Saris have a Fae power to slow time or see an enemy plan of attack? Or is it simply Solace and her wielding some kind of power through Solace? But this quote was like, I got a spidey sense tingling on this one.
I mean, listen, if Callie Hart wanted to plan an Easter egg, that's an Easter egg planted.
For sure.
For sure. And who knows, maybe it's one of those things like she might use it, she might not. But I don't know. I feel like there's
slowing down time to be able to like strategically figure out the situation in a battle. Fucking cool.
Because it's like she, with that quote, she could see it slowing down. She knew what the movements were going to be before they happened.
And it's not even like how in a lot of books or even in movies, you get that sense that someone is going through something crazy and in their mind, it feels like they're seeing things in slow motion. Yeah. Ren says, what was that?
Exactly.
So it happened to him too.
They both experienced it.
Her.
Is it time slowing down? Is it battle foresight? Is it something like that? Like I can see an enemy's move before they make it. I've seen this also come when in other fantasy books, sometimes they'll talk about like your aura like moves before you do, and you can sense that. So if you can see that aura movement, you know somebody's movement before it happens. That's kind of how I saw it visually in my head, is that it could see the movements while the main body of the feeder was still like back a bit, so it could see it happening in slower before it happened. That's at least how I visualized it in my head. But I think this is something about a Fae power of hers.
Maybe. Like the first time I read it, I definitely didn't pick up on that. Like in my mind, it was like, okay, I'm here. I am having this sense of understanding. This is what I need to do. And then she unleashes her fighting skills, and to me, Renfis was responding to those skills coming out. Like, what was that, girl?
Okay.
But when you're reading this and point it out, like, I kind of...
Yeah.
It'd be fun.
I can kind of see it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I don't necessarily think her alchemy ability... Like if she's Fae, I don't necessarily see that as her being her Fae gift, because I
agree.
I always thought
she's gonna have more.
Yeah, like Fae had the ability of alchemy, right? But that wasn't their
skill.
That was a skill. It wasn't their gift. So I think this is presenting her gift, because we know she has a drop of Fae blood in her. So
at least a drop. I love it. Oh, I love it.
And so let's think about that. Like, let's think about powers for a second, because Kingfisher has shadow powers and shadow gates.
And illusion
has an illusion
to a lesser extent.
Renfis has
we've seen in this
light power, but we really haven't seen what other Fae powers have really been mentioned. Really and truly, the only ones that we actually see of like extraordinary magic is Renfis and Kingfisher.
Bellicon, you would think a king would wield like so arrogant as him would wield something.
But
Everlane,
but we haven't seen it.
A pretty great power, but like we've only kind of heard about it. We haven't really seen it.
I would think, is that a power? Is it a skill?
I don't know. Not everyone can do. I don't know.
Like, are you an oracle?
I think that's splitting hairs.
Probably. But it's a good point you make.
Right. Like, out of all of these creatures, out of all of these Fae, why haven't we seen like all of them having some sort of extraordinary power? And maybe they don't.
Right.
Maybe not all Fae do. You're right.
Like maybe we have a high Fae versus lesser Fae
right.
situation, where the lesser Fae might not have extraordinary magic, but the high Fae do. But then we've met a lot of high Fae. We've met Everlane. What does Everlane have? We've met Lorith. What does Lorith have? We've met Bellicon. What does Bellicon have?
Lorith sings beautifully.
That is a beautiful power.
But it's something to think about.
To sleep to death.
Okay, that's dark.
I mean, yeah.
It was like romantic, and then you're like, to death.
To death.
So then Kingfisher comes back. Sarah says, quote, Fisher was all business again. He set me down and went to Wren's side, his magic boiling out of him in a curtain of darkness. The second he drew Nimmerel, I knew this fight was over. Wren moved fluidly, holding back the remaining vampires with ease, but watching Fisher was something else. He didn't swing the sword, didn't wield it. The tarnished black blade and the warrior were one. He flowed. Where Nimmerel cut through the air, trailing tendrils of smoke, vampires fell like stalks of scythed wheat in the sword's wake. It was both beautiful and terrifying to watch. Kingfisher turned killing into an art form.
That was really cool.
Yeah.
How do you picture him, Lindsey, in your head when you're reading that, especially with like the shadows and the tendrils and everything?
Almost like, to me, do you remember the movie Jumper with Hayden Christensen? Yeah. When he kind of like jumps and there's like this trail of like smoke behind him. It's kind of like that, but in more of a fluid form. Yeah, like as he's moving so fast that you almost don't see his movements. You see it go from here and then all of a sudden it's over here and there's like a trail of black smoke behind it. That's how I picture it.
It's so cool. I like the visual so much on that.
And it's also really beautiful, this paragraph, now that you know, once you read the bonus chapters, what Nimmerel is and what it has. The fact that they're like, oh, he didn't wield it, he didn't swing it, like they were one. It's like his friend, his like some kind of connection, love, you know, best friend's sister who he loved and who died awfully. Morel, like she's helping him in battle and they're like fighting as one. And that's kind of beautiful.
Freaking love how Kelly is so on board with these bonus chapters now.
I know.
They're so good.
There are so many connections now, and I'm like, okay, well, now we know why.
They're so good. Yeah. I love it. And again, more description of Angel's breath, right? So, quote, a brilliant white light lashed through the air like a whip on the lower side of the bank. For a split second, night became day. Raw, unfiltered threads of power probed across the edge of the darn, seeking multiple marks at once, and surprise shouts went up all along the bank as warriors locked in battle watched their opponents burst into flames like torches. It was Lorith and the angel's breath Aviciath had granted him, and the sight of it set my soul on fucking fire.
But again, angel's breath. Another instance of angel's breath. So it's like ultimate power.
And this is our biggest description that we get of angel's breath, right? So, quote, the spiderweb of power jumping from point to point amidst the melee, destroying everything it touched and turning Malcolm's army into pillars of ash. For the first time in 1,000 years, a godsword had found an Evelian worthy and granted him magic to defend his people. Ooh!
So what is it? What do we think? Does this mean the gods have returned, that they find them worthy? Is it pointing to something else, or is it just the first step? What do we think?
So I always got the impression that Zareth and his daughters, Baal and Mithin, never left. I get that impression because when we have the bonus chapters and we have the fact that they're continuing to interact with Kingfisher, it's like they have a relationship with him. I get the impression they didn't leave. And I think that's further confirmed with Zareth at the very end when he's like, I've been watching you, Saris. I've been trying to see all of your different fates and everything, that all the different endless possibilities, right? So I think those three never left. I think it's the other gods that are coming back now.
Yeah, I could see that, because why would they be so involved this whole time?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think you're right. I think they're coming back. I think they're starting to see that people are worthy. I think there's going to be a whole lot more gods in the next book.
Do you think we're going to meet more gods in the next book?
Yes, I do.
Like, are you both solid were guesses? Yeah.
Yes. Oh, mostly because of Lindsey, because Lindsey's obsessed with fantasy religions and gods. And she has been right about this in the past. And I was like, nah, they're just saying it. And then frickin' where the gods come.
Right.
And I'm like, yes, they're coming back.
I do.
You convinced me.
Love fantasy religions. I find them fascinating. And then Everlane shows up.
Fucking there.
On the other side of the darn.
I was literally devastated when this happened. Like, did anybody else, like, I remember the first read being like,
like clutching your pearls. Like,
yes.
Oh my God.
Like, did not expect it. Like, probably should have, because she was so important, and then she kind of disappeared from the story for a while, and then like there, but I was shocked. I was so upset that I don't think I really understood why at first, but I was fucking devastated.
I have a different take.
Tell
Let's
me.
hear it.
I
I think she
wasn't.
did it on purpose.
When she ended up over there, my first thought was, that's very convenient.
Is she the betrayer to you?
Yeah. I'm really questioning Everlane because it's just, she was raised by Bellicon. We know Bellicon is a baddie. And it never,
But not a baddie in a good way.
no, like a baddie in a baddie, bad,
Not like
bad
a
way.
baddie.
Like a bad,
but like
bad,
a
baddie.
baddie.
Yeah, like a bad boy. Bad boy.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it in our last episode. Like, what if Everlane is the betrayer?
Because
Yeah.
it just, how can she have lived her entire life with Bellicon, not be influenced in a negative way by him? And it would also make it would make a really good baddie for her to have presented this version of herself that seemed so nice, taking in Saris, her care for Kingfisher and Renfis, for it all to have been an act. That would be
You think it's like
so
full on act?
cool to me. We keep looking for the great betrayer. And so for this one, it just seemed so strange to me that one, she stayed behind. She was never influenced by her father. It just seems like he's not going to be nice and keep her out of this. And it just seemed so convenient that I just wonder things about Everlane.
I know. I mean, it does make sense with our thoughts of a betrayer happening.
Sure.
And the only other thing I'm just going to say, I didn't necessarily, if you felt this way, that's fine. I don't think you need to say it to the person's face. And she said about Fisher, I stopped thinking about him just so I could get through the day. And I was like, that to me was such a harsh thing to say that I'm like, that would have been an inside thought I would have kept on the inside and not put that out there for other people to see, because it did give off, it was my first inkling that maybe Kingfisher being gone didn't necessarily affect her as much emotionally. And maybe I'm just reading into stuff, right? Because we're trying to find this great betrayer, and I'm just, but
but it didn't sit well with you.
It didn't sit well with me.
If Everlane is the betrayer, let's just go down this line of thinking for a minute. If Everlane is the betrayer, did she know where Kingfisher was the whole time?
Yeah.
Was she in on the plan with Bellicon?
Yeah. That would be my take.
Oh, during the 110 years?
That would be my take. Because that was why I was like, does she not care because she knows where he is, and she truly does not care.
Yeah.
Oh, that's such a
Which, I mean, we could be wrong. We're putting a light on something could be
right.
wrong.
This is complete. And I don't think any of us actually believe this.
No,
I think we're like,
postulating, really.
yeah, I think we're
there are no
thinking about
receipts
it.
here. This is just like, what if?
This
what
is just
if?
us
Spitballing.
Yeah.
Spitball.
For those who are curious, we're not invested in it, but it's interesting to think about, right?
Yeah. And I mean, it would also make sense for her name being everlasting if she was the whole time in with her dad and the vamps and showed up on the vamp side of the river.
But just think about it. A character who is so sweet and it all being an act, and then they're evil. That's a complex character. I would just like that from the simple fact that I would love such a complex character that was able to pull off something like that.
Because here's the thing. Even if that is true, which I could see how it could be true, I don't know that I believe that she doesn't love Kingfisher and Wren. Like, I kind of see it even being more complicated because I don't know that she was faking her care about them.
Right. But
Like,
at the end of the day, she just wanted her father's blessing.
I could see that.
She doesn't have her mother. She's going to cling to the father's blessing, maybe.
Right. I mean, her mother died in childbirth. So, like, she literally never knew her. Would not have gotten anything from her.
And if you think about it, like, Bellicon was upset that she was female, right? He wanted a male heir.
That's true.
And so her entire life, she would be searching for a way to potentially earn his good graces.
Fuck. I don't know. I don't know how I feel. I mean,
would you be more upset? Okay, would you be more upset? This is just us having fun.
Rather?
Would you rather
Okay.
Everlane is the baddie, or Carrion is the baddie? Which
Everlane.
hurts your heart?
Everlane. Carrion hurts so much more. Carrion's on a book boyfriend list. Watch the episode if you haven't watched it yet. No, not.
You're like, you're not touching him.
The more we talk about it, Everlane's, that storyline for Everlane makes sense.
She's the
That's true.
sleeper.
Right. And she's a major character without being one of the top characters. So it's almost an easier wound to take in an early part of the series when a character betrays. So it's not like, what do you mean you just killed off my favorite character in chapter 1 kind of feeling, but big enough that you're like shocked and upset about it without it being fucking Carrion, you know?
Well, and go through the list. We've done this before of like, who would it be that betrayed Kingfisher, right?
Yeah.
We felt like Danya is too easy
and not intelligent enough.
Right. She's too easy of a choice.
She's hot.
And could she pull it off?
Yeah.
Lorith doesn't make sense because a piece of Lorith's soul is tied to Kingfisher.
Yep.
Renfis just doesn't make sense
because of their relationship, period.
Yeah, like
you can't fake that.
I would be like, really? It would
there had to
push me away.
Right. Yeah. Like it just does. It literally doesn't make sense.
There had to have been signs for us to be able to accept it, and there just haven't been enough.
Yeah.
The only way I can ever accept Renfis being the betrayer is if something eventually happens to him where he is taken over, he loses his memory, like something big happens that he is able to literally become not himself and then betray him. That's the only way I'm buying a betrayal from him.
But nothing
without stopping the book and being like,
right, like nothing under the context of this book.
Correct.
So then again, who else would be close enough to Kingfisher to betray? It would literally leave Everlane.
Mm-hmm. It's so true.
Or Wendy.
So true.
Or Saris as our morally gray female.
I don't see an ultimate betrayer.
Either. I'm just putting it out there.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that they will have trouble in their relationship.
It's a 5
given her new position at the end of the book, but I don't think she's a betrayer.
I think she's not a betrayer. I think I just would like her to be a morally gray female main character. I would like that for her road, but I would agree with you. I don't.
Yeah, I think we're going to see a moral struggle.
Oh, for sure.
In the next book.
I don't think that Saris and Kingfisher's ups and downs are necessarily going to be their love and their relationship, because yes, there are tons of that happen. It's like a common thing to happen, but I've also seen it done really well where the love interests are strong in their love the entire book and nothing sways them, but they're dealing with things external and are separated or whatever it is, and they have to deal with things together, but they don't sway in their love and their commitment to each other.
Can I get a book recommendation for that, please?
The Plated Prisoner series.
I had a feeling you were going to say it, and I was really hoping you were going to say it, so I'm really happy you said it.
That's a great example of it.
But, like their struggles are external ones, but not internal ones.
They're not internal. So I don't necessarily think that it could be internal, but I don't feel like, oh, well, something bad has to happen to their relationship, because I've seen it done well where that's not the case.
I would agree with you, because I would really struggle in believing they're God mated if we're going to have issues within their relationship for the next 4 books. Like I would really struggle to be like, well, then they're not God mated, because I'm just like, you cannot make that type of commitment. So I'm really hoping this one is external conflicts, not conflicts in the relationship, because honestly,
it's a slow enough burn. They've had their conflicts already.
I'm fucking sick of it. I like fantasy romance where the plot is the plot and the conflict. I'm really, really tired of relationship conflict in fantasy romance. So many of these characters are really, really old. Get your shit together.
You're 1733
years old.
Yeah.
So speaking of old, how about Teladius?
Oh,
Lord of Midnight.
Okay.
Really?
The second he walked on there,
really,
I immediately liked him. I
kind of felt like he was going to be a good-ish guy.
I thought he was going to be he is a baddie, but he's a hidden goodie. And I was really, really hoping he was going to be that way, because there was just something about the way he communicated was basically like, if you look at what he says, he's communicating what Malcolm wishes.
Yes.
He's not agreeing with
He's very nonchalant.
anything
He's
Malcolm
the messenger.
says. Yes.
And didn't he say at one point, like, Fisher, I don't care about making your life miserable. Like something like he says something to that effect. And I'm like, huh. I think I read it because I immediately assumed, oh, he's one of Malcolm's people. He must be awful. And so I already had this thing in my head. Like I judged him. And the first read and then the second and third read, I was like, wait, is he? I'm so on the fence about him because I was so anti him the first read that I don't know.
So
yet.
Lindsey, your first read of it, you had that thought too of
First
immediate.
read,
Yeah.
Yeah, like that he wasn't so awful that maybe he was under Malcolm's thrall, and that's why.
And he was. That's confirmed.
No, he is.
Right. Yeah. But I think that that's the reason why he's on that side and not necessarily because he is inherently evil.
I agree.
And now that Malcolm doesn't exist anymore, and at some point we do get that from Taladius where he doesn't really know what his life is kind of going to be like.
Right. Now what?
Right.
But
so we get a big data dump here about vamps and the curse. Let's go through some of this. The original vampires were cursed. Most bitten by those vampires turned into feeders. Only the strongest, Malcolm being one of the examples, or the only example
remaining
at this point, the only remaining example, could bite someone and have them turn into a vampire instead of a feeder, but only if he then allowed that person to feed from him in return and complete the transformation. So this is very old school vampire.
Yep.
You can be bitten by a vampire and die, or you can bite each other and turn into a vampire.
But only the strongest can turn. And that's why.
Yes, only the strongest have that power.
And that's why Malcolm has all of his like lords, princes, whatever he calls his like minions, which it's interesting because I consider Malcolm a vampire. I consider those Malcolm turned vampires. And then there's a tier below.
And then there's feeders.
That where vampires bite somebody, they can't turn them into vampires. They either become enthralled for as long as that process continues, and then they become feeders. Like, are we sure? Because I don't think vampires can turn other vampires, or can they?
I think we learn more about the ranks later in Taladius's chapters with Sarah.
Okay.
I think
so too.
Yeah. So that might be answered then.
So Everlane can't take the cure. Besides the fact that they don't know, they don't have records of what that cure was. It's lost to time because they don't write shit down.
But she wasn't.
Cursed. So
No.
she
was
bitten.
bitten.
She's bitten. So her fate is either die or Malcolm turns you into a vampire.
And you become one of his princesses. Yes.
So
that's my understanding.
Remember, there's no magic on the other side of the river. Okay.
Well, it's just when you say that. We went on a walk today. We had a fun little walk in our neighborhood today, the three of us. And we were talking about the bonus chapter, right? And we were talking about Brimstone and Amontreath. And the mountain is... Don't even start on that. The mountain in Old Fae was the sleeping giant. Remember how, and I postulated that what if that sleeping giant is a dragon, right? What if it's not a mountain? What if it's a volcano instead, right? Because it talked about in the bonus chapters how the dragon didn't breathe fire. It breathed brimstone, which was more akin to like lava, right? And think about the placement of that mountain. And so when you just now said there's no magic on the other side, that mountain kind of divides it. And from the bonus chapters, we know dragons don't have magic. So it's almost like I'm kind of feeling that kind of theory that we were talking about earlier today with the fact that it's almost like the mountain is that magic barrier, you know?
Okay.
And it was just because what is the trigger for there being no magic on the other side? Are we saying it's like vampires in general? That's the reason there's no.
No, it's because they've drained the land. So there's no more light and life there.
How did they drain the land? Evil
powers. They suck the life out of the land.
Yeah, there's no life there.
Yeah, there's nothing.
There's no
grows,
plants.
Nothing,
okay.
Yeah, it's
there's
just
nothing
like
there anymore.
Barren wastelands. But it doesn't mean that your theory is not correct.
Right.
No,
Yeah.
I'm just,
You
I was
know?
then thinking of, well, how does a vampire suck the lives out of all the children in Salem?
Before it's sunrise? Oh, it's curtains.
Sorry.
So Kingfisher starts to make a gate to cross over, but Renfis stops him, obviously. First of all, a gate won't open on that side of the river because there's no magic. So
Mhm.
who knows where it'll spit you out? All right, that makes sense. And think, why the hell do they have Lane over there? Why isn't she already fucking dead? There's got to be a bigger purpose here, right?
Yep.
And then there's a quote. She looks so strange. Her pale skin was lit from within, giving off an ethereal glow. Again, kind of going back before, Katharine, to what you were saying about them glowing and almost appearing beautiful, but then kind of like changing, right? Her hair swirled around her as if she was underwater, and yet she wasn't wet. Her hair, her skin, her clothes all dry. The rain came down harder than ever, but not a drop of it touched Everlane. So again, it's very similar to what you were saying earlier, that
She's
like
in, like,
beauty.
a magic orb.
Yeah.
But she can't. There's no magic.
Right.
So how is she doing this? There's no magic. So what's causing this? Is
that the vampire thrall?
Yeah.
That's weird.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that,
Yeah.
actually.
Rain is life-giving, so it won't touch her maybe or something like that? I don't know, but it's weird.
Yeah, I don't
But then
know.
it wouldn't rain over there if we're following that thread.
Is Teladius getting wet right now?
Teladius, you wet, bro. So we see also here that Lane has basically been collared. At the base of Lane's slender throat shone a thin band of gold. It was a fine thing, pretty. It looked like it was engraved with some kind of pattern, though I couldn't make out the details of the design from here. Attached to the band of metal was a thin gold chain. As I noticed it hanging down in front of her, it snapped taut, and Everlane jerked to her left, almost losing her balance. It's like a frickin' dog chain.
Yeah, he's collared her.
Yes.
I do want to point out the fact that it's gold. So
that's a good-
previously, Kingfisher has said that gold has no worth, that only silver has worth, but silver is also the only thing that can kill feeders. So Everlane has a gold band. So I don't necessarily know that there's magic in that band or if it's literally just a collar, but there's an interesting parallel there. Again, I just like the call back to like gold has no worth, but yet gold is
But here
what's
you are.
collaring her.
But
Yeah.
it's a good point because when you describe it, it's a fine thing. Yet it pulls tough.
Right. It seems so delicate.
Yeah. So there has to
Meanwhile, it
be
has a lot
some
of
magic
power.
there, like you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something's there.
Okay, so Harry Potter reference, like number 47 here. I could not help, I'm sorry, but Teladius's description is that he has luminous skin and cropped blonde hair, and all I could think was him being Draco Malfoy and
Yeah.
like snitching to Malcolm and being like, my father will hear about this.
Yeah. I totally pictured Draco Malfoy
But
too.
this totally fits in with the fact that I always pictured Lucius Malfoy with Malcolm.
That is so funny.
There you go.
Yeah.
See?
That is it tracks. It
Hashtag
tracks.
Malfoy. So what you're telling me is that Stannis Roth is really just Malfoy Manor.
Yes. Bellatrix
Acceptable.
is gonna pop out.
And that would
Cool,
also
cool.
explain why you liked Teladius too, because you love Draco.
I do. Oh, and actually, here's another reference that Katharine is totally going to love, and I know she's going to love it, because Everlane speaks 4 or 5 words that Saris can't hear because of her Fey hearing. And in my mind, all I could think was Buffy and Spike saying in 5 words or less, out for a walk, bitch.
Best line.
And I knew
ever.
when I typed that Katharine would completely understand.
When I saw that, I was like,
out for a walk, bitch.
yes. That was the best
But
ever.
important here, though, what do we think those 4 or 5 words were that she spoke to Kingfisher, but like Saris doesn't have Fey hearing, so she can't hear it? Is it like, don't come to me?
It was me all along.
I don't know. What do we think? Was it
It's
don't?
part of a plan. I don't know. If we think that she's
I'm okay.
Yeah, like
He
if we
hasn't
think that
hurt
she's still
me.
good. It's to me, it's either saying it's okay, I've got this, or don't worry, I know what the bigger purpose is in 5 words or less. But
Or
if
maybe
she
it
is
was out
evil,
for a walk,
Bitch.
bitch.
Maybe it was. I don't know.
I love it so much. I'm so glad you put that in the
I
outline.
know,
It was
I
the
know.
best edition ever.
What was Kingfisher's reaction when she says something to him that Saris doesn't hear? Do we remember?
I don't think we
don't get
one.
that.
reaction
Because I think we're in Saris's perspective, and I think she's watching Everlane in that
so
moment.
we don't see how he.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you get the impression that Fisher's love for Everlane is more, or at least maybe he shows it more than Everlane shows it to Fisher?
No.
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 Because in the next chapters, and maybe it's simply because she's bonded to him, we're
Yeah.
getting that more inner, and we just don't get enough interactions with Everlane and Fisher, so we just don't get to see that side of
Because
it.
I think back to the very beginning where they see each other for the first time, and she's like, go sleep in my room. You know, like she wants to take care of him. She wants him to be around.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think she was very, very sweet to him in those first few chapters. So I don't automatically go there.
But she didn't want it being spread around that that's her brother.
But I don't know that that was on her or that's on
I
Bellicon.
think she's afraid of her father.
Yeah.
That's how I read it.
I agree. When I first read it,
Yeah.
But it could easily
I read
be
it that
explained
way.
the other way, and that's the
Right.
problem. Is that we don't know, Callie, because I'm waiting.
we're waiting for a call that you're never going to give us because you're like, I'm
Never.
not going on a
Listen.
podcast and letting you guys spoil my amazing book
Never,
series.
Jay,
Let
never.
them talk about
Let
it.
them talk. Let them talk.
Let them. Also important to point out that the angel's breath reacts to Teladius.
Mhm.
It does? Oh, I missed that.
Yes.
Yeah,
How does it react?
As if Lorith took the sarcasm in his voice personally, a flicker of angel's breath crackled through the air. Brighter than the lightning scoring the clouds, it burned my eyes as it crashed into an invisible barrier in the middle of the river and was instantly diverted, shooting harmlessly up into the air. And then it says the vampire didn't blink. And then he says something later. I see you've managed to restore one of your precious swords. Congratulations. I'm sure that feels like quite a feather in the cap. So the god sword and angel's breath reacts to Teladius or Everlane.
That would be a nice
know.
little misleading thing to add in there.
Yeah.
It would be.
And then I did kind of have a wonder here. Teladius says to Renfis, I am Lord of Midnight to you. I won't be addressed so familiarly by one so low. So is Renfis low-born? We've never really gotten any of Renfis's background.
That's true.
Is Renfis, I think we assume he was part of court,
Right.
potentially like
But
royal
maybe not.
adjacent, but it sounds here that he's kind of low-born.
Yeah, it could be simply just because he's a general. So maybe he's got risen through like the army ranks his entire life.
Because he's Kingfisher's best friend. Maybe he was the son of a servant and they became best friends and they grew up together and Kingfisher was like, no, F that. You're my best friend. You're going to like,
Yeah.
you know.
But for sure we're going to have to learn more,
Absolutely.
right? In later books. So Everlane was bitten 12 hours ago, and we get into the importance of that in the next chapter. But he wants Fisher back, but now more importantly, he wants Saris. So we're assuming it's because she's an alchemist, right? He
Yeah.
literally says Malcolm wants the alchemist.
Yeah.
Or is it because she's an alchemist? Or is it because she's important to Kingfisher and he's mad that his little pet has left him and he wants to hurt his pet?
I don't know.
I think it's a mix of all the things. I think D, all of the above.
He just wants to like spread evil.
Yeah, he hates Kingfisher. He wants to get back at him. She's fucking important. She has power that he wants. I think it's like the perfect combo of this one person can give me like 18 things that I want.
But it brings back all of my like alchemist questions of like, why did they die off? Is she the only one? Zaris says that there's alchemists everywhere. So obviously Malcolm is going to want to control the Quicksilver. Is that the only reason? Is it because she can forge Quicksilver weapons? Silver is also awful to the vampires. It's the only thing that can kill them. So does he want her under his control? Potentially?
Because I would assume that a vampire could not wield a god sword because vampires don't have magic. And so I feel like, because you have to be accepted by a god sword.
Yeah.
So I would like if she forges weapons for him, I feel like he wouldn't be able to use them anyway, because I feel like the weapons would reject his kind.
But wait, why do you think vampires don't have magic? They're fae.
No, they said there's no magic over there.
Oh, that's true. Okay.
So if
because they are fae.
Yeah.
Well, maybe they have magic everywhere else but Sanisroth.
Or they have a different kind of magic.
Right,
I guess
because if they can access
like,
power,
are we getting into a dark magic brimstone situation?
Yeah,
here?
so maybe it's not that there's no magic over there. Maybe the more correct assumption should have been there's no light magic.
Fae magic. Yeah.
Because if they are magic, then saying that they are magic, but there's no magic over there is an incorrect statement.
Right.
That's really confusing.
Yeah.
And
They're magic, but there's no magic,
Right?
but there's no magic in the
It makes no
land.
sense.
They don't know. We know they know. Also, that's problematic because if she's queen of the vamps, does that mean that she loses her god sword?
No, because I
Solace
think she's
doesn't-
part fae.
Yeah, she's still half fae.
Part vampire, part fae. So I think that her part fae side
Because
would keep
the fae were cursed to vampires, or then they were bitten to become vampires. So I think, although they appear fae, I believe they are now converted and truly are vampire.
They have converted.
For her, they made a point of saying you are half fae, you are half vampire, so she is still fae. So I think she could.
So you think she's going to be able to access?
Yes,
all the
because
first
she's
versus
still
not access
magical
anything.
herself.
I like it.
But it also would be nice if your point of saying, is it dark magic over there? If she is now a combination of light magic and dark magic. That'd be cool.
Is it November 18th yet?
I know, right?
Just a few more
Nope.
days.
Nope. So chapter 33, Blood and Thanks. I do feel like this chapter is another huge data dump,
Yes.
right? Like
So much
the
info.
entire chapter is just data dump.
Don't you think that's
info.
basically the rest of the book? You like have to think so much. from
Yeah,
here on
So
out.
many
there's a-
loose ends get tied
Yeah.
together, and new holes for the next book come out. It's just so.
But at
much.
least some of the chapters have like action to
Oh,
them
yeah.
with the data. This is just purely information. Okay, so Kingfisher's father apparently studied the blood curse for decades. Question mark.
Why?
Why?
Let's just throw that one out there.
Maybe his wife, Oracle wife, just throwing it out there.
Yeah,
Okay.
right? So, how to cleanse a thrall's blood and burn away the enchantment between master and thrall before conversion begins. Is this why Belicon wanted him gone?
Ooh, that's a good point. That's a good thought. I like that thought.
Because he was studying how to get rid of the blood
And
curse.
he was studying
Right.
alchemy and he had all of this stuff. So, I mean, he could sense a rival, sense the rival's heir. Maybe he sensed Fenrir as his first rival, dispatched with
Yeah.
that one, sensed his son as a rival as well, right?
So, if Malcolm was the only one left who was cursed, everyone else was bit.
Yeah. Oh, can we talk about this sexy stare down they have? I really like this stare down that Fisher and Saris are doing in this chapter because it's this quiet moment between them. He literally is looking into her eye and not
Okay, just so you know,
moving.
that is not a sexy stare down. That is a crazy eyes stare down. You
And in
need to
case
have like
anyone's
a
wondered,
small
we are
distance.
in the same room. Like, I have gotten this question, and people are like, "Oh, wait, you're all in the same
Yeah.
room." We are all in my office, so we are looking at each other.
I
So
was
when you
literally
see-
looking at her crazy eyes like this.
Lindsey, me.
Catherine, Kelly.
Lindsay.
So,
All my crazy
But it
shit
is.
in the
It's
background.
a smolder
and
for sure.
they communicate through their bond. So they then have this inner dialogue together where she's like prodding him a little bit. She's like, come on,
I
come
love
out of
bond
your
communication.
come on out of your stare down. Like, what are we gonna do? And he's like processing, but she's like, it's almost as if she's like, I now know Fisher. I know what he's doing. I know what he needs
Yeah.
right now. He needs to decompress. He needs to process this because they're on the same wavelength finally. And I just loved this stare.
Yeah. And then a little data about Rorik Dianthius, aka Carrion's father. He was the last Avelian king and he discovered a cure. But Malcolm chose to stay a vampire. He killed off all of the others. And so he was the only originally cursed vampire left to remain. Again, now that Malcolm's gone, is that important anymore? Is it a lie?
And
Are
he
we
was
going
the
to find
first,
another one?
and he was the first affected by the blood curse.
Yes.
Right. So he's the
But
oldest.
let's think about that for a second.
He's the first and the last.
We don't know why the curse happened, and we don't know why Malcolm specifically was the first one affected.
Right. What did he do?
Yeah. And so
Was
it's
it
so
him?
strange that he's like just dead when I feel like curse could come back. Nobody knows what caused the curse.
Yeah. There's also when they talked about how over the years everyone who did keep the curse died off, but they whispered kind of that Malcolm ingested their power, which
Ew.
is really disgusting.
Ew.
Where if he's really dead, where does all that power go? Does all their power literally just dissolve, or does it go back into
Maybe
the
it
earth?
goes into
Like where is that?
Sarah's because she
Right?
killed him.
Like if they died and he ingested their power, then you would have to assume that just because they died doesn't mean their power dies with them.
Kelly, could you reenact how he ingested their power, please? Oh, so
It's like a Dementor's kiss.
yeah. I was gonna go for
Okay, I'm gonna stop doing that. But okay, if we're following that logic and Fae are saying when the original cursed vampires died that Malcolm ingested their power, then that means that their power doesn't die with them and it has to go somewhere. So where does all Malcolm's power go now that he's dead, if we do believe that he's dead? IDK.
I don't
Find out.
know. I don't know
the answer to this question.
Noodle on it. Let us know if you have
Yeah.
any theories, people.
I don't know.
because What the heck? What the heck's going on over here?
So when one of his lords, though, like Teladius, bites a victim, they can drink and sate their thirst without killing. But if they bite the same human a number of times, eventually they become enthralled, which means the victim is bound to them, basically mindlessly devoted to their needs without a thought to themselves. So they typically get bored and drain them, and 3 days later they rise again as feeders. But Malcolm only has to bite once to create a thrall. And in 56 hours, Everlane will die. Not sure where the magical number 56 comes from, but
It's just what it is.
there we are. So he is the only one that can only bite once. So he has bitten Everlane. So 2 scenarios. Either Malcolm permits her to drink from him and she eventually does it. When she actually does it, she'll return and become something like one of Malcolm's lords. Or if she refuses or he refuses his blood to her, she will die and return as a feeder. Not great options.
No. And where does that leave her to if he's dead? If she can't drink from him? Then what? Is she doomed to become a feeder or is she freed?
Well, that's where the end of the book becomes very
Right.
important.
Yes.
The witches.
And then someone talk about their favorite.
I fucking hate Danya.
Oh, Danya. Danya comes in
She's so
and she
hot-headed.
punches Lorith. which
She's
made
the
me
worst.
So fucking mad. Danya says, I earned it. Fisher said, your father passed it down to you. So since the blade was reforged, it now belongs to Lorith. Aviciath literally explodes her hand off, rightfully so, because she's a frickin'
Because she
bitch.
touches the sword that doesn't belong to her anymore.
Right. Like, you should
Yeah.
know better.
But she doesn't know better because she thinks it still belongs to her.
True. And Sarah's muses that Danya doesn't actually deserve to have her hand regrown. We do not disagree in this group. Not disagreeing with
Fuck
that.
around, find out.
Seriously. And Danya is like the epitome of that. Then Renfis also wants to give Sarah's credit for her part in the battle, which I absolutely love. We have among us a newly blooded warrior, and we see Fisher's pride at this, which is really sweet. We have Ren's warm approval, Lorith's wolfish grin.
But
What do we think?
I don't know. I have to wonder if this is a commonplace thing or is this something larger, i.e., becoming a Lupo?
Yeah.
Well, they call her sister now, so I think this is an
They
induction
do.
into their secret society.
Right?
And the words newly blooded
Yeah.
warrior, like
It's
the
kind of
blood-
washed over, like they never say specifically you are now part of the Lupo Praelia, but it kind of reads
It's
that
implied
way, right?
since they call
Yeah.
her sister.
Yeah.
Yep. This is also the first time in this chapter Fisher uses her full name. He calls her Saris Fane. He doesn't call her little Osha or human. He fully says Saris Fane. And she also notes that this in the next chapter. So we are going to dive deep into that and the bigger impact of the name meetings in our next episode. But this is a really incredible way to end a chapter. There are so many possibilities. You're like, wait a minute, is she in? Is she like in the club here? And then Fisher kneels at her feet and says her name, although she did note that he said it with a sad smile.
What's your read on that sad smile?
Just danger for the rest of her life. If she's in their club with them, her life is going to be devoted to the same fighting that all of the other Lupos have dealt with. And I think he's both happy and prideful that she is, but also sad that she has to go through it. That's my read of it, at least.
Yeah. I totally agree. And I feel like it's kind of his accepting of the fact that they're mates, like this thing that he's been trying to kind of avoid for so long. He can't avoid it. It's coming true. She's, like you said, she's part of this group that is a very dangerous group of folks, group of fae. And yeah, it's like that bittersweet, oh man, I'm so proud. But now the person that I love is going to be in this with us.
Yeah. Well, and bonus chapter, spoilers, he's lost someone that he loved in a very major way, who was part of his Lupo Paralia.
Yep. Who fought alongside of him.
This book, I feel like, is the epitome of like beautiful sadness.
Yeah. It's a good way to say
it. You know, like beautiful disasters, beautiful sadness. Like it's so stunning and there's such beautiful moments, but as a whole, it's devastating.
It is.
And I love it.
Let's end it on that, guys. What a way. Way to end it. Again, there's all these chapters. There's so much happening here. There's such a big data dump. I think in our next episode, we will probably use about 95% of the data that we learned in this set of chapters to dive into the next one.
Connections,
sure.
So that was nice of the author to kind of give us this information before the test in the next.
Right before the test, too. Little study guide. Huh, Callie? Well, that is a wrap on chapters 30 through 33 of Quicksilver. Thank you so much for joining us for book club this week. Next week, we will be covering chapters 34 through 38, so be sure to join us for the next Fantasy Friday. Happy reading!
Bye. Bye.